Thank you, Robert. Glad to be here.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Now, for British viewers who are not quite as close to what's going on, in your part of town as Americans, you were close to Donald Trump. You fell out. What is your relationship with him now?
I'm not so sure I really fell out, but I'm very close to President Trump. Have been for many years, particularly after he left the White House in 2021.
And so how much advice do you give him at the moment on a sort of daily, weekly basis?
Well, we have the number one show from MAGA, the number one show for activists streaming on podcasts and radio every day for 4 hours, 6 days a week, of which he gets a lot of the content from. And I don't want to disclose, personal conversations with him, but we're in pretty close contact.
And so we've got to go to a break in just a second. I've got one related question, and then I've got loads more to talk to you. You have said that your Make America Great Again, your MAGA movement, has trained 3,000 people to enter government were Donald Trump to be re-elected president. Who are these people? What jobs would they do?
When you win the presidency, you immediately get 3,000 political appointees to basically work with and control 2.2 million federal employees, about 2.5 in the military, and about 16 million contractors. It's about 20 million. Remember, we spend $7 trillion a year. We run a $2 to $2.5 trillion deficit that we can't pay for. We just print money to do it. When you win the presidency, you get 3,000 political appointees immediately, and you get 1,000 that have to be Senate confirmed. We're training many more than the 3,000. As you know, in 2016, when we came from behind and won, we weren't really ready with the depth of talent you needed and the number of people trained up to take over really the executive branch. This time, we're training much more than 3,000. The Heritage Organization, Center for Renewing America, all these different organizations that are conservative or on MAGA are training tens of thousands. 3,000 will be the first wave that hits that will really staff the Trump government at every level, from Department of Energy, Department of Defense. Every billet that needs to be filled will be filled pretty quickly in the second term.
Steve, don't go away, because I want to now discuss what you would hope a Trump presidency would do and achieve. So we'll be back with you in just a couple of minutes. Welcome back. I'm delighted that Steve Bannon is still with me. Steve, historically, you and President Trump have mistrusted what people call the deep state. Will you try and replace people at the top of the CIA and the FBI and all of that?
Well, of course, that's the prerogative of a president. We will definitely have picks. Remember, let's go back to the previous conversation. You have basically 2 million federal employees, but then you have 16 to 18 million contractors. We have what's called the administrative state. That was never structured in our Constitution. It's kind of taken over the government. It's these bureaucrats. It's in every form of American life. And yes, and the rogue element of that, the national security, the intelligence, the law enforcement, that's the rogue element of that, is what we call the deep state. The first line of attack is the administrative state. And certainly President Trump is going to replace members of the CIA, DNI, all that, which he has the prerogative to do. Those are the 1,000 Senate confirmed positions. But President Trump will look to deconstruct the administrative state. The Supreme Court's already into this right now, reviewing cases about downsizing this bureaucracy. Because in your previous conversation, you talked about a financial crisis and economic crisis in the United Kingdom. We have it to the 10th power here. We're running $2.5 trillion deficits every year. We have $34 trillion of face amount of debt, and we're adding $1 trillion about every 100 days, Robert. We're reaching a financial crisis of epic proportion. It has to be dealt with. One of the ways to deal with that is to deconstruct the administrative state that's helping to drive this.
And when Donald Trump talks about a 10% tariff on all imports, is that something you approve of?
100%. I'm a populist, and I believe in building a manufacturing base here in the United States. I think that where that's really going to be is against China, and maybe even the tariffs will be higher. The manufacturing jobs. Remember, the elites in our country, the people that run Wall Street, Silicon Valley, the corporatists that run the businesses in our country are really globalist. and they're much more in business with the Chinese Communist Party than they are with the American people. We need to put some restrictions on those folks. That's where we're going to, I think, increase tariffs at least 10%. I think hopefully more against the Chinese to start to bring the manufacturing base back to the United States and create high-value jobs.
And when Donald Trump talks about sorting out the Ukraine war in 24 hours, what does he mean?
Well, I think he's the best negotiator to do it. But, Robert, I think the Ukraine war is going to get sorted out here in the next 72 hours or the next week. Remember, the United States Senate, and particularly the Republicans, they're about to drop two thermonuclear bombs on the people of the United States. One is essentially an amnesty program at the border that's going to give immediate work permits to the 8 million illegal alien invaders that have come in on the Biden watch. At the same time, to do this, to get $60 billion to send to the corrupt oligarchs in Ukraine. And the Republican Party is going to fight this tooth and nail. We're going to fight it in the House. MAGA does not want one more penny going to Zelensky and these corrupt oligarchs in Ukraine. We want people to go to the negotiating table. It's time to stop killing on American money, the $120 billion we've already put in, to stop killing innocent Ukrainians. It's time to get to the negotiating table. I think President Trump could cut that deal in 48 hours. But I got to tell you, I think that this Ukraine situation is going to be solved well before he gets back to office.
But surely it would be appalling for peace in the world if Putin, hangs on to a large chunk, about a third of Ukraine, as a result of an illegal invasion.
The eastern Russian-speaking border of Ukraine is not in the vital national security interest of the United States. What's in the vital national security of the United States is the southern border of the United States, about our sovereignty, our territorial integrity. And in addition, starting to have our NATO partners start to be an alliance and stop being a protectorate. The first thing the Europeans ought to start thinking about is you've got to get up to the 2%, which I think the United Kingdom does in Poland, but you have to become an alliance, not a protectorate. A strong NATO alliance where the individual nation states are actually getting militaries and paying 2% of their GDP, which they committed to, with the United States as an alliance partner, not an overall security guarantee by the United States, is the way to thwart Russian aggression. I spent 8 years of my life as a young man as a naval officer, 4 years in the Pacific, in the South China Sea, and then in the North Arabian Sea and Persian Gulf on a destroyer that was ASW hunting Soviet submarines. I spent a couple of years at the Pentagon when we worried about the Soviet Union, the Bolsheviks coming across the North German plain, the Fulda Gap. So that's not a point today. You saw 80% of the combat capability of the Russians, I think, by NATO have been destroyed in Ukraine. So I don't think you have to worry about. I don't think you have to worry about.
Mr. Bannon, I'm being told, unfortunately, slightly frustratingly, because there's so much more I want to talk to you about, we are out of time.